See? Okay, what would I do without you guys? Okay, thank you. Okay, this week's Parsha is Vayeira. A lot of interesting things going on in the Parsha. We learn out at the beginning of the Parsha, very interesting halacha, that chnosus orchim, meaning having guests, is greater than even what's called Kabbalah's Pnei Ashchina, greeting the face of God. Avraham Avinu was in the middle of this talking to Hashem. The pasuk opens, Vayeira of Hashem. Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu. All of a sudden, the three angels, Avraham Avinu thought they were people initially, and he said, God, wait a minute, I have to go take care of my guests. So from there, the Gemara learns out that hachnosas orchim, hosting guests, is even greater than Kabbalah's Pnei Ashchina. It's even greater than talking to God. And the Gemara learns it out as a halacha. It's a bottom line halacha. That, in fact, every time when the guests came for Tishrei to the Rebbe, there was a Eid, his name was Rabbi Yaroslavsky, the father of the Rav in Lud, in Nachlas Chabad. And every time the Rebbe would visit the guests, the Rebbe would turn to him and say, having guests is even greater than talking to God. But the question is, Avraham Avinu really didn't do real hachnosas orchim. Rashi said in the pasuk that the malachim came, Vayochelu, Avraham Avinu gave him the food, Vayochelu, and they ate. So Rashi says they really didn't eat because there were angels. So Rashi said it looked like they were eating. Rashi says, Rashi says, Niru kamesha achlu. It looked like they were eating, but they didn't actually eat because angels don't eat. So then the question is, bottom line is, if you ask a halacha question, did Avraham Avinu actually host guests? The answer is no, because they didn't eat. If they didn't eat, you didn't host guests. So the question is, how in the world can we learn out a din of achnosas orchim from fake? It's virtual achnosas orchim. It wasn't real achnosas orchim. Can you imagine doing virtual hosting guests? Is not hosting guests. Avraham Avinu basically gave food to the angels. They didn't even eat. So how is it that Avraham Avinu, and we knew that his greatness was hospitality, especially to the angels, on the third day after his bris, when he wasn't feeling when Hashem came to visit him and so on. So the Rabbi explains a very important aspect of the difference between pre-Matan Torah and after Matan Torah. Before Torah was given and after Torah was given. We learned in previous classes the uniqueness of what Matan Torah accomplished was that until Matan Torah, we mentioned this last week also, the mitzvahs the Avis did, the mitzvahs that the patriarchs did not make the physical world holy. We mentioned last week, Avraham Avinu playing with the colored sticks. It says in Zohar, they putting on tefillin. Did the sticks become holy? No. Before Matan Torah, it wasn't feasible for the physical world to become holy. If the physical world didn't become holy, it was a different type of doing mitzvahs. After Matan Torah, mitzvahs had to be done in a physical sense. You couldn't play with colored sticks and fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. So therefore, the Rebbe explained it this. It says in Chassidus, what was the mitzvah performance of the Avis before Matan Torah? It wasn't with the physical world. Before Matan Torah, it was all the spiritual intent of the mitzvah. It wasn't the physical mitzvah. That happened after Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, before the Torah was given, mitzvahs were spiritual intent. And therefore, the Rebbe explains Avraham Avinu did do real hachnasas orchim on a pre-Matan Torah level. Pre-Matan Torah, it's intent that mattered, and Avraham Avinu had all the intent of hachnasas orchim, even though they didn't actually eat and they didn't actually fulfill the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim in a physical sense, but intent was there, and therefore Avraham Avinu, on his level, did do the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim, and therefore we could learn out that hachnasas orchim is greater than even talking to the God himself. Another point of hachnasas orchim in this week's Parsha, and that is there is physical hachnasas orchim. What does hachnasas orchim mean? People need a place to eat. According to halacha, by the way, especially when they're from out of town, hachnasas orchim and Shulchan Aruch is when people come out of town, they don't have a place to eat, you host them. That's hachnasas orchim in halacha. Yeah, it's nice to have guests over, but the mitzvah per se of having guests is when they come from out of town. Just like there is the physical aspect of hachnasas orchim, meaning giving people eating, sleeping, drinking. You have people that are hungry and thirsty spiritually. And there's a mitzvah of hachnasas orchim that a person needs to go and host guests, not only in the physical food, physical drink, physical bed, but in the spiritual sense also. If somebody is hungry and you give them spiritual food, you do hachnasas orchim. And there's an interesting concept. There's eating and there's drinking. What's the purpose of drinking when you eat? The purpose of drinking is that the food should be spread out throughout the entire body. That's the medical purpose of drinking, to spread the food out throughout the body. The liquid washes the food down to the various parts of the body that it needs to go. In spirituality, you also have eating and drinking. You have Torah mitzvahs, that's, so to speak, food that a person needs to eat. Torah is called bread. Torah is called lechem. You need to give a person in the mitzvah of hachnasas orchim spiritual food and spiritual drink. That's what needs to be given. And that level of hachnasas orchim is greater than Kabbalah's Pnei HaShechina. What does that mean? It's greater than communicating directly with God. I'll tell you very simply what it means, what it explains in the Rebbe Sichos and Chassidus. You have a person that says, you know, I need to learn, I need to daven on my level. I could learn on a very lofty level, I could daven in a very holy way. Why in the world? And at that time, I'm meeting God, so to speak. I'm communicating with God. I'm davening to God for 6 hours. I'm meditating into the greatness of God. I'm Kabbalah's Pnei HaShechina. I am meeting God at that time when I'm learning and davening in the spiritual realms. All of a sudden, you come to a guy and say, you have to leave that realm. You have to, Vayeira Hashem. Hashem appears to you in davening. Sometimes you have to tell God, excuse me, wait a minute. I have to spiritually take care of the needy people, the people who are needy spiritually. I need to feed them. I need them to get to drink. But you're losing out because you're stopping the communication that you have with God. The answer is yes. Hachnasas orchim is even greater than Kabbalah's Pnei HaShechina. That's what a person needs to do. Sometimes they need to leave their spiritual heights and lower themselves to take care of another Jew. Where do you have that in halacha? Somebody could say, where does it say in halacha that? Maybe halacha says if I'm learning and davening, that's what I should be continue doing. So it's a very simple halacha. If somebody's life is in danger and you're in the middle of learning, now what are you supposed to keep learning and let the person drown, God forbid, let the person die, God forbid? What are you supposed to do? Halachically, you have to stop your learning and save the person's life. Are you learning? But you're talking about pikuach nefesh. You're talking about saving the life of a person. I mentioned in the past, I heard from my father a story in the previous Rebbe's time. There was a teacher that was teaching in Hebrew school. A frum person teaching in Talmud Torah. Years ago, Talmud Torah took place right after public school. Kids went straight from public school twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever it was. They went straight to the Hebrew schools to learn Torah. And there was a Rabbi who would teach every day the kids Torah, public school kids. One year, he lost his father and mother, and he had to say Kaddish. And the dilemma was, the public school, right after, when they finished and they went to Hebrew school, in the winter time, was smacked at the time of Mincha Mariv. And he had a problem. He had to say Kaddish. He wanted to daven for the Yom. He wanted to be the Chazan. And he couldn't do it. It was either that or giving up teaching Jewish children. And he asked the previous Rebbe, what should he do? He has to say Kaddish for his parent, which is a halachic obligation. And at the same time, he doesn't know what to do. He can't teach anymore. So the previous Rebbe said to him, who told you learning with Jewish children Torah is less elevation for the soul than Kaddish? On the contrary, you want to say Kaddish because you want to elevate the soul of the one that passed away. The previous Rebbe said to him, teaching Jewish children Torah is more beneficial for the soul of the deceased than you saying Kaddish for him. That's what the Friedrich Rebbe told him. I think he hired somebody else to say Kaddish, but personally, he did not say Kaddish because the previous Rebbe said to him, what you're doing is even greater. So yeah, you could be learning, you could be davening, you could be on spiritual heights, but there's achnosis archim. There are people that are starving spiritually for spiritual food and spiritual drink. And the Torah says that achnosis archim is even greater than Kabbalah's Pnei Ashchina. It's even greater than your lofty levels, and that's what you need to do. There's an interesting medrash that I saw, very short, but a very interesting medrash. When it says Avraham Avinu gave the malachim food, it says here like this: Vayika chema v'cholav. Okay, he says, Vayika chema v'cholav. He took milk and butter, uben abakar asher asa, and the animal that he made, and then he says, v'omer aleim tachas ha'etz. Okay, and he stood with them under the tree, vayochelu, and they ate. Before Avraham Avinu said to them when they first came, Yukach no ma'at mayim. Take a little bit of water and wash your feet. It's interesting. The Medrash says like this: in the merit of the food, the chema v'cholav, the milk and the meat that Avraham Avinu gave them, the Jews merited the man in the desert. When he said to them, "V'ishanu tachas eitz," rest under the shade of the tree, and that's who they merited to have the clouds of glory that accompanied the Jews in the 40 years in the desert, in a way that it protected them, it shielded them, it gave them shade, it washed their clothing, it straightened out all the mountains along the way and all the snakes and scorpions. This that Avraham Avinu told the Malachim, Yukach no ma'at mayim, take some water and wash your feet. In that merit, the Jews had the Vayeira shel Miriam, Miriam's well. So it's interesting. Ma'isa Avis Simim Labanim, because of the three things Avraham Avinu did to the angels in the mitzvah of Achnasas Archim, because of that, the Jews merited the man in the schus of the food he gave them, resting under the tree. It was the cloud of glory, and a little bit of water was the Vayeira Shemayim, the well of Miriam that the Jews merited in the desert. Okay, now we know that it says in Kabbalah, Avram's attribute was the attribute of chesed, kindness. Yishmael, who was Avram's son, his attribute was also chesed, also kindness. He was an offshoot of Avram. But he was chesed of klipa, chesed of evil. Yitzchak was gvura of kedusha, severity of kedusha. Esav was severity of evil. Let's just talk about Avram and Yishmael. By the way, Kabbalah and Chassidus explain that why is it Avram had a Yishmael, Yitzchak had an Esav, all seemingly not such great people, and Yaakov Avinu was mitasish shlema, all his children were tzaddikim. Why is that? So Chassidus and Kabbalah explain, Avraham Avinu was unlimited chesed. Unlimited chesed. It says in Sefer HaBoyer, which is from the earliest Kabbalah Svarim, that when Avraham Avinu came into the world, the attribute of chesed of Atzilus, chesed of Atzilus, the highest level of kindness in Kedusha, came to Hashem complaining that now that Avraham Avinu is existing in the world, I'm out of business. All the chesed that's done in the world, Avraham Avinu, chesed of Atzilus said, you know what, he took away my job. What's the problem with that though? Unlimited chesed, unlimited kindness creates evil. If you're going to let your kids do whatever they want, and you're going to let all your workers do whatever you want, and everybody should be spoiled and just be unlimited kindness without any restrictions whatsoever, you're creating monsters. Avraham Avinu's problem, so to speak, unlimited chesed creates a Yishmael. Yitzchak was very severe. Pachad Yitzchak, the level of yira, fear, awe. Unlimited gevura creates an Esav. Yaakov, which is tiferes, mercy, a combination of chesed and gevura together, then all his children, all his offshoots are tzaddikim. What's the difference between chesed of kedusha and chesed of evil? Both are kindness. What's the difference if it's kedusha or it's evil? So again, the Rebbe explains in Siches as follows. Avraham Avinu in this week's Parsha, when he's arguing with Hashem about not destroying his dime, Avraham Avinu said to Hashem, Anechi afar ve'efer. I am dirt and ashes. I am nothing. I am nothing. Avraham Avinu had chesed in a way of bittul. What does it mean? Avraham Avinu has chesed and bittul. When you want to do kindness to somebody, there's two reasons why you want to do it. There's two reasons why you want to do it. One reason is, I really care about you. It's not about me at all. I care about you. I want you to have what you need. That is what's called chesed of kedusha. Chesed of evil, kindness of evil, like the pasuk says, chesed le'umim chatos, but the Rebbe explains at the end of the first parak of Tanya. Many times chesed is done because I want to get famous. I want to be glorified. I want to be called a good person. I want people to think highly of me. That is not, according to Chassidus, holy chesed. Because that chesed you're doing for yourself, for your self-gratification. Avraham Avinu's level of chesed was Anechi Afar Va'efer, meaning I am nothing. I only care about you. It's a lofty level, which, it should be a problem. It's a lofty level. But Avraham Avinu's chesed of Kedusha means it's only what the other person wants. Yishmael, chesed of Klipa, is only good when it's what's in it for me. And therefore, the Rabbi explains like this. Avraham Avinu's chesed, how do we know he only cared about other people? The guys are in a desert. Really, if you give them bread and water, it's enough. No, for them to eat and drink, bread and water is enough. Avraham Avinu, what did he give his people? Avraham Avinu gave his people delicacies. At the beginning of the Parsha, it says he shechted 3 animals. Why? Because he wanted 3 tongues for each of the guests with mustard. You have to shecht 3 animals because 3 different people need tongue. You couldn't give them something else. Avraham Avinu, there was no me. What's needed? If something is needed, that you do it. That's chesed of Kedusha. Yishmael, on the other hand, who wasn't the level of bittul. Yishmael was chesed, but it's chesed of evil. It's not evil. It's a very funny word, evil. It's a chesed that is for self-gratification. And the difference is, as we learned in Tanya, if somebody does it for self-gratification, then in certain cases, when they're going to hurt themselves by doing it, they won't do it. If they'll risk their life to do it, they won't do it most of the time. You'll find righteous people that will do it anyway. And that's the difference between the chesed of Avram and the chesed of Yishmael. Another thing. What did Yishmael do chesed? Well, Yishmael is the level of chesed of Klipa. Doesn't say exactly in Chumash what he did as an act of chesed, but Kabbalah says he was chesed of Klipa. You have Klipa. Okay, there's 2 parshas basically that talk all about Avraham Avinu. Last week's Parsha Lech Lecha, and this week's Parsha Vayeira. Okay, these are the 2 parts. Chayesara talks a little bit about Avraham, a little bit about Yitzchak. Yitzchak passes, Sarah passes. The 2 parshas in Chumash that the entire parsha is devoted to Avraham Avinu is Lech Lecha and Vayeira. What's the difference between the 2 parshas in a spiritual level? Lech Lecha was before the bris, and Vayeira, when Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu to visit him after the bris, Vayeira deals the level of Avraham Avinu after the bris. Lech Lecha deals with Avraham Avinu pre-bris. The end of Lech Lecha says Avraham Avinu circumcised himself. But Lech Lecha is before the bris. Vayeira is after the bris. What is the difference between the 2? It's very interesting. In Parshas Lech Lecha, when Hashem appears to Avraham Avinu at Bris Bein Apsadim, the pasuk says like this: Acher advar ma'ila, Perek Tezvav in Lech Lecha, Haya dvar Hashem al Avram b'machazeh. Avraham Avinu, Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu in a vision. B'machazeh. It's a vision. It's, so to speak, it's as it called Targum expression. It's not really a Hebrew word. Machazeh is a vision like Chazain, Yeshayahu, all the Chazain, the Nevuah of the Nevi'im. This level in Vayeira is Vayeira Hashem Elov. Hashem appeared to him, not in a vision. Hashem appeared. Vayeira Hashem, Vayeira Elov Hashem. Hashem appeared to Avraham Avinu in an open vision. It's similar to the difference between all the other prophets and Moshe Rabbeinu. All the other prophets, the Gemara says, Kol HaNeviim Nisnaba B'Koi. All the prophets said prophecy with the words Ko Amar Hashem. So Hashem said. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Zeh Hadavar. This is the word. Zeh pointed vision of what God said. The difference is like this. Vayeira is a level of revelation from above. Machazeh is what the person has the vision. The person's having the vision. Vayeira Elav Hashem is Hashem's appearing to him. The difference is, I'll tell you what the difference is. In a deeper sense. There's what's called avanim, there's stones, and there's levanim, which are bricks. What's the difference between bricks and stones? What's the realistic difference between bricks and stones? So it says in Halacha and Gemara and Sfarim, stones were created by God. God made stones. Bricks, as it says by Migdal Bavel, at the end of Noach, when they built the tower to go fight Hashem, it says they got together, they took the cement, and they made bricks out of it. Bricks is something that people make. Stones are something God makes. What's interesting is all languages, Shivim Lashon, the 70 languages, which now branched off into who knows how many hundreds, but there's 70 fundamental languages. The 70 languages, B'chlal, generally speaking, are what's called Lashon Heskami. Lashon Heskami means people decided that these are the words for this language. Lashon Kodesh, biblical Hebrew, is not what some people decided, let's make up a language with Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, or with the various different words. God created the world with Lashon Kodesh. God created the world with Hebrew. It says in Rashi and Chumash, Medrash, God created the world with Hebrew. Even by Migdal Bavel. So, Rashi says, what language did the whole universal world speak until Migdal Bavel, until the Babylonian tower that got spread them out all over the world? Was Hebrew. Lashon Kodesh, not Ivrit, not modern day Hebrew. Lashon Kodesh, Hebrew, biblical Hebrew. That was the language God created the world with. All other languages are man-made. Therefore, every year they add words to the dictionary. Every year words are added to the dictionary, words are taken off the dictionary, added. People decided today's kids make up words in the tech world. They make up words and that's it. And the parents have to go figure out what they mean. That's a language. It's Lashon Heskami. Lashon Kodesh, it says the expression is Lashon Atzmi. It's not made up by people for people. It's an essential language that God created the world with. It's God's language. That's the difference, whether it's avanim, if it's stone, which is God-made, versus bricks, which are man-made. And therefore, in Sefer Yetzirah and a lot of other books, and this brought down, anybody who learns Chassidus knows this, that the comparison in Sfarim of words is to stones, not bricks, stones. The Gemara says 2 stones make 2 words, 3 stones make 6 words. Letters are called avanim. All over the place. Letters are called stones because letters themselves are inanimate, like a stone. But why is it called a stone? The Medrash says that not the Medrash, the Vayeira says 2 stones, meaning 2 letters, creates 2 words. Aleph Beis, you can make Aleph Beis and Beis Aleph. If you have 3 letters, Aleph Beis Gimel, you can make 6 formations. And it keeps multiplying. Who knows? There's a mathematical way of doing it. That is Avanim. That's the level of Vayeira, revealed from God. B'machazeh is a level of a vision, man-made concealment. Machzeh means a vision. It's not open. It's not Vayeira in a way that it's mamish, wide open, and you see the vision of Hashem. It's a hidden vision. B'machzeh. At night. So this is the difference between Parshas Lech Lecha and Parshas Vayeira. Lech Lecha both deal with Avraham Avinu. One, Lech Lecha deals with Avraham Avinu before the bris. Therefore, in Lech Lecha it says B'machazeh. It was a vision, external vision. Loshen Targum it says. It's Aramaic. It's not even a real Hebrew word, even though it's in Chumash. Vayeira, after Avraham Avinu had the bris, then it's the level of like stones from heaven, and it's the level of Gilui, a revelation from above. Another difference, moving from Avraham to Yitzchak, because in this week's Parsha, it speaks about the birth of Yitzchak. What was the difference between Avraham Avinu and Yitzchak? What was the difference in their Avodah? And not only in their Avodah, their lifestyle, and basically also what they did for a living. Avraham Avinu, we said before, is a level of chesed, kindness, hospitality, benevolence, whatever words you want to use. Avraham Avinu personified chesed. What did Avraham Avinu do for the living? Avraham Avinu had guests, achnasas orchim. What's achnasas orchim? Achnasas orchim means you go out to people. What did Avraham Avinu do for a living? Unlike Yitzchak, that we'll soon discuss, Avraham Avinu traveled. Vayisa Avraham holech v'nasaya hanegba. Avraham Avinu, the Medrash says, traveled the whole perimeter of Eretz Yisrael. Hashem said, this land is yours. So Hashem said, I want you to travel all around Eretz Yisrael. And he did. Avraham Avinu went out to people. Avraham Avinu didn't wait home until people came to him. Avraham Avinu's Avodah, which is chesed, he personified chesed. His Avodah was traveling from place to place. Yitzchak Avinu, there was a hunger, he wanted to go down to Egypt. Hashem says, no, you're not going anywhere. I'll take it to Mitzrayim. Rashi says, why not? Because Yitzchak, by the Akedah, that we read about at the end of the Parsha, became an Eila Tamima, became a korban. A korban can't go out of Eretz Yisrael. Yitzchak's Avodah was not hospitality giving from higher to lower, traveling to the people. Yitzchak's Avodah in Parshas Toldos, what did he do for half the Parsha? He dug wells. What do you mean? He was a well digger? What did Yitzchak Avinu do? Why is the Torah going? And now he did one well and they fought, another well and they fought, and finally there was a well called the Vayeira that they didn't fight about. What's going on over here? Yitzchak's Vayeira was digging wells. What is a well? Unlike Chesed, which is coming down, there's a level of water that goes up. What happens when you dig a well? You dig deep into the ground, and then the water comes up. The water doesn't come down like rainwater, mountain water. It goes down from a high place to a low place. That's the attribute of Chesed. Avraham Avinu's Vayeira was Chesed. Hachnasas Harchim, hospitality, traveling. Yitzchak was not going out, rather dealing with his own level to reveal the depth of the Jew, of the neshama, the depth of the neshama coming up. In Vayeira, it means that digging a well, the water is deep under the ground. You have to dig deeply and get rid of all the mud. When you get rid of all the mud, then you actually, what you do is you find water and the water comes up. Yitzchak's Vayeira was not going out traveling. It wasn't hospitality. Yitzchak's Vayeira was the opposite of Avraham Avinu. He didn't travel, but he taught people how to dig deeply within yourself and reveal the neshama that you have within you. That was the Vayeira of Yitzchak Avinu. In fact, the Rebbe explains in many siches, that was the difference in the Hasidic world between the Baal Shem Tov and the Mizritcher Magid. The Baal Shem Tov, as it's known historically, traveled all over the place. The Baal Shem Tov traveled all over the place to spread the teachings of Chassidus. The Magid, as it's known, didn't go anywhere. The Magid didn't travel. The Magid stayed home and people came to him. What does the people coming to him mean? The water coming from below, going up to the Magid. In serving Hashem, both things are vital. You need both of them. And that's why by Matan Torah, both things happened. God came down and Moshe Rabbeinu went up. Why couldn't it just happen? God should come down into the world, or Moshe Rabbeinu go up to heaven. On Har Sinai, the pasuk says, "Vayeira Hashem al Har Sinai." Hashem came down, and Moshe Amar Alei El Hashem, and Moshe Rabbeinu was told go up to Hashem. Because in serving of Hashem, you need both aspects. You need Avraham Avinu's aspect, and you need Yitzchak Avinu's aspect. And they don't contradict themselves because they're a common goal. It's the goal of connecting the Jew and Hashem. The shidduch, the marriage between Jew and Hashem, could be Hashem coming down. It could be us going up. And both are important. Each one has an advantage over the next. What's the advantage of each one over the next? When Avraham Avinu does kindness, you give a revelation from above to below, you're giving a lot. There's one problem though. The person is not necessarily a vessel for it because they didn't work with themselves. Gvura is necessary because what is Gvura? Again, you dig deep within yourself and bring out your hidden talents, your hidden powers, the power of the neshama. That is making a vessel for it. You know, you flick a lighter. If there's no fuel in the lighter, you'll get a spark. You'll get 10 sparks. The spark is there. But if you don't have the fuel, you don't have the vessel for it, it doesn't last. What is necessary? Both together. Avraham Avinu, his lifestyle was achnasa sarchem because Avraham Avinu's attribute was chesed, giving from higher to lower in abundance, more than the people deserved. He gave them tongue with mustard, each one of them. At the same time, you need David of Yitzchak Avinu to elevate oneself and make a vessel for that revelation of Kedusha. And then it stays within the person. And that's why you need and therefore, it says like this. The Rabbi adds one more point. Somebody can come and say, I tried working on myself. I tried working on another Jew. I was not successful. So somebody could say, give up. You tried. A for effort, but mission wasn't accomplished. What did Yitzchak Avinu? They dug one well. He wasn't successful. They fought on it. He dug another well. They fought about it again. Did he give up? No. He dug the third well, called Rechavis. And now we multiplied in the earth. You never give up from digging into a person, into ourselves first, and into somebody else, because there's a treasure down there. There is a big treasure down there. The treasure has to be found. Don't give up. And if you try something and you're not successful, excuses don't work. I mentioned that the Frierdiker Rebbe was called in a chassid, an older chassid, a prominent chassid, and he gave them a mission to do. Whatever reason is, the chassid couldn't do it, didn't do it. The Frierdiker Rebbe calls him up and calls him back, and he says, did you do what I asked you to do? He said, Rebbe, no, and he gave the Rebbe legitimate reasons why he couldn't do it. So the previous Rebbe said to him, listen, I asked you a question, and you gave me an answer, but you know what? The thing still wasn't accomplished. A Jew should never give up with excuses. You mentioned the Rebbe many times by Fabrengen. In Hebrew, the word for excuses is amatla. That's the Hebrew word for an excuse. Amatla. Aleph mem saf lamed aleph. You know what amatla says in Sfam? The Rebbe says it's two words. Emes lo. It's not the truth. Any excuse is a very good excuse, but you still didn't do it. If you didn't do it, it didn't do it. So somebody can come along and say, listen, I tried, I couldn't do it. David says, learn from Yitzchak Avinu. He dug once, they fought. He dug a second time, they fought. Never give up. Eventually, you will win. You will be successful. Okay, one more very interesting thing. In today's Parsha, after Zedem was destroyed, so it says that Lot and his two daughters thought the whole world was going to be destroyed. Okay, so it says, Vayal Mitzvah Vayeshev Bahar. He sat in the mountains. They thought the whole world was destroyed. And he sat down in a cave with his two daughters. Lot and his two daughters were in the cave. So the older one says to the younger one, Avinu Zakein, our father is old, and there's nobody else in the world. They thought the whole world was destroyed, except them. So everybody knows the story. You know, these stories everybody knows. The older one says to the younger one, let's get our father drunk and let's have relations with him, and at least we'll have children. Incest. But they said, listen, Cain and Hevel, the two brothers, also married their sisters. There's nobody else to marry. So, there's nobody else in the world. They thought literally the whole world is destroyed, Rashi said. And therefore, let's do it. So now the question is, where do they get wine? So Rashi says, Yayin is dam lahem b'mayra. Basically, Hashem did a miracle and put wine in the cave that they should be able to get their father drunk and have the two kids, Amin and Maya. The Ramban, by the way, interestingly says no. The Ramban says in Pshat, people use, in those days, the Ramban says the caves were cool. People used to store wine in the caves. And they came into the cave and they happened to see wine there. It wasn't a miracle. Rashi says, Rashi implies clearly that it was a miracle. Hashem made a miracle that they found wine for Light and his two daughters to have more kids. So the question is, come on, why does Hashem do miracles for incest? The fact is, by the way, Hashem knew that the whole world wasn't destroyed. Hashem knew that Avraham Avinu and everybody was still alive outside of the Dain. So why did Hashem do a miracle that these two girls could get light drunk and have intimacy with him to be able to have children? Why in the world did Hashem do a miracle like that? The answer is, and this is super remarkable, when Amin and Mayav comes David HaMelech HaMashiach. The first daughter who became pregnant from Light, which is in itself a miracle, by the way, the Medrash says that she became pregnant right away from one time. She had a child, is called Mayav. The second one was Bnei Amin. Okay? Amin and Mayav. Mayav was the ancestor of Rus, who was the ancestor, Rus HaMayaviyah. Rus came from Mayav. Rus was the ancestor of David HaMelech and the ancestor, therefore, of Mashiach. Think about it. From this incestuous relationship of Light and his daughters comes David HaMelech and Mashiach. That was Rus. Who was Rus married to? A guy by the name, a fine gentleman by the name of Boaz. Who was Boaz a descendant of? Yehuda and Tamar. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law. Not a very great relationship halachically. Today, if a father-in-law has relations with his daughter-in-law and makes her pregnant, the kid's a mamzer. The mamzer. Where does Boaz come from? Who is Mr. Ruth, so to speak? The father and mother who created David HaMelech and therefore Mashiach. Let's take it a step further. There was a very fine gentleman in Chumash by the name of Moshe Rabbeinu. Very fine gentleman. Who is Moshe Rabbeinu's mother? Yocheved. Who is Moshe Rabbeinu's father? Amram. Yocheved was Amram's aunt. Yocheved was Amram's aunt. An uncle is allowed to marry a nephew. An uncle can marry a niece. Not the Rabbi Chassid, but halachit says in mitzvah for an uncle to marry a niece. For a nephew to marry an aunt is biblically forbidden with capital punishment. Kid would be a mamzer. If an aunt marries a nephew and they have a kid, the kid is a mamzer. After Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, it was allowed. That's why Amram married Yocheved. He married his aunt because it wasn't forbidden before Matan Torah. The Medrash says by Matan Torah, Amram and Yocheved had to divorce because it was a forbidden marriage. Not before Matan Torah, but after Matan Torah was forbidden. At Matan Torah, the Medrash says Amram and Yocheved had to divorce. But Moshe Rabbeinu, yes, he was born before Matan Torah. Yes, he wouldn't have a status of a mamzer. But why in the world should Moshe Rabbeinu be born from a relationship that after Matan Torah would be a mamzer with capital punishment, with terrible things. Lama asa Hashem kacha. Why did God do this? So it's late, but in a nutshell, the answer is as follows. The higher the thing, the lower it falls. Right? A wall falls further down than the place next to the wall. The higher the thing, the lower it falls. Things that come down in evil, God runs the world. God makes the world exist. God's presence in evil, because it comes down so low, even into evil, total evil, things which are halachically forbidden. In essence, it's a super great level of kedusha. The problem is, Torah forbids it. Why does Torah forbid it? Because we don't have the ability to elevate that spark of godliness that's in total evil. Things in neutral level, like we learned in Tanya, klipas naiga. It's not such a lofty level. And because it's not such a lofty level, we could elevate it. It's not bound to the evil. Things that are bound to evil, the sanctity in it is so conceptually so great, we can't elevate it. It's too great for us. But certain things that are super great have to be revealed through the super low, where the great finds itself. Greatness, ultimate greatness finds itself in the super low. And there, it's not the normal though. The Kedusha of Moshe Rabbeinu is not a normal level of Kedusha. Mashiach, David HaMelech, these are not normal levels of Kedusha. They couldn't come through normal channels. The same thing we'll learn in Mirta Shem when we get to Parsha's told us. Why did Yaakov Avinu have to, so to speak, he didn't steal it, but why officially did he steal the brachas? He couldn't go normally? Rivka could have said to Yitzchak, you know, he's a bad guy, don't give him the bracha, give a bracha to Yaakov. No, it didn't work that way. He had to come, bemirma, deception, whatever it may be. Why? Because things that are super great can't come normally. Super great things cannot have to come not normal, because they're not normal in greatness. If they're not normal in greatness, it's not the normal level even of holiness. It has to come from something not normal and evil. And therefore, Chassidus explains, why did Hashem make a miracle for loving to have incest? Hashem could have made Mashiach come from somebody else, a normal marriage. Moshe Rabbeinu could have come from something that after Matan Torah would have been allowed. But certain things are too great to be normal. And therefore, what did Hashem want? Hashem did a miracle. He brought wine into the cave for light to get drunk and create Am and Moav, to create David HaMelech and Mashiach, because they're too great to be normal. They have to come through Mishigas. Craziness of Kedusha can only come through craziness of evil. And craziness of evil brings craziness of Kedusha. It's not something we're allowed to do. But when Hashem makes it happen, that's what happens. So this is the explanation, according to Chassidus, of why the miracle happened with light and the two daughters, to be able to create something super holy from something super evil in a negative way, but transformed to ultimate Kedusha through David HaMelech and Mashiach. Okay, once again, tonight's class was sponsored by Mrs. Sarah Carmeli in honor of her daughter's birthday, granddaughter's birthday, great-grandson's birthday. Should have a lot of nachas from all of them. Mirta Shem Wednesday, Halach and Tanya will be at 8 o'clock. Amit Hashem, see you then.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
So-
Thank you.